Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe Retrospective, taking a look at each film in the MCU and seeing how well they hold up. Last time, we saw one of Marvel's best and groundbreaking sequels with Captain America: The Winter Soldier, a fantastic thrill ride that reinvented a classic character for a modern age. Today, we look at the first significant departure from the MCU structure with Guardians of the Galaxy. The comic book history behind this is a little complicated. The original Guardians team made their debut in Marvel Superheroes number 18 in 1969 and were created by Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, and Arnold Drake. The lineup consisted of Yondu Udanta, Major Victory, Martin X Tanaga, and Charlie 27. The original idea for the group stemmed from fighting off communism, a common theme explored in comics at the time. The team was a relatively obscure part of the Marvel Universe until the revived series in 2008 with a completely new team created by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. The new members were characters already established across the Marvel lexicon. The team leader, Star-Lord, was created by Steve Englehart and Steve Gann and first appeared in Marvel Preview number 4 in 1976. Rocket Raccoon was created by Bill Mantlo and Keith Giffen and first appeared in Marvel Preview number 7 the same year. Groot was created by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Larry Lieber and first appeared in Tales to Astonish number 13 in 1960. Drax and Gamora were created by Jim Starlin and first appeared in The Invincible Iron Man number 55 in 1978 and Strange Tales number 180 in 1975 respectively. This iteration of the group was more successful than its predecessor and instantly caught the attention of Marvel Studios, who began talks of a film adaptation in 2010. This was a precarious move since the Guardians weren't known amongst general pop culture. In Iron Man's case, there was at least his 90s animated show and other cartoon appearances. Most people outside the comic book circle had never heard of the team or the characters, so there was a significant gamble in making this work, especially since it was the only third MCU film made under Disney. If things didn't work out, there's a chance the studio could have ended up being shut down. Thankfully, Marvel was adamant about making a fun sci-fi adventure, which is why they hired James Gunn to write and direct. Gunn was mainly known for writing the Scooby-Doo movies before making his directorial debut with the black comedy horror film Slither. Incidentally, other future MCU directors, Peyton Reed and duo Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, were also in the running to helm the project. Nicole Perlman had written the film's initial draft before Gunn came in and heavily rewrote the story to fit his vision. Despite this, the Writers Guild still gave her primary screenwriting credit alongside Gunn. This was also the MCU's first major space movie. Thor had given us a few glimpses of Marvel's cosmic side, but we hadn't seen it on a level like this before. Guardians of the Galaxy premiered a few months after Captain America: The Winter Soldier and managed to surpass it as one of the year's highest-grossing films. Critics and audiences were instantly taken with the team and have since become some of Marvel's most popular merchandise. However, given how the cosmic world of the MCU expanded over the years, does this movie still have the oomph it had? To me, it does, and here's why. The film begins with what is probably Marvel's bleakest opening. In 1988, a young Peter Quill visits his mother, Meredith, played by Laura Haddock, in the hospital dying from cancer. She gives Peter a gift before suddenly passing, devastating him. This is extremely sad for the beginning of a Marvel movie, and it's made all the more jarring when Peter runs outside and is abducted by an alien spaceship. Definitely a unique moment in the MCU. As the opening credits roll, we cut to the present with a now adult Peter, played by Chris Pratt, going by the name Star-Lord on the planet Morag, searching for a special artifact and jamming to some old school tunes on his Walkman. This is a good time to mention the most important character in the movie, the soundtrack. Although Tyler Bates' original score is fantastic and deserves a listen, the uses of retro pop songs from the 60s and 70s give the film an incredibly unique personality. They're more than just background noise. They create a sense of the mood and atmosphere in each scene, further immersing us in the world. Peter eventually makes it to the item he's searching for, a mysterious orb, and obtains it rather easily, easier than Indy stealing the idol in Lost Ark. However, he is caught by a group of Kree soldiers led by Korath, played by Djimon Hounsou. Peter manages to escape in his ship the Milano and takes off. He's contacted by Yondu, played by Michael Rooker, who leads a group of mercenaries called the Ravagers, of which Peter is a part of. He questions Peter about the orb, and Peter decides to overstep him and take the orb to Yondu's client, the broker himself, and take all the profit. Yondu puts a bounty on Peter, with the stipulation that he's captured alive, much to the annoyance of his crew who feel he's always soft on Peter, though he claims he'll kill him personally. Meanwhile, Korath returns to his boss Ronan the Accuser, played by Lee Pace, empty-handed. Ronan is a Kree fanatic, seeking vengeance from a 1,000-year war between his people and the people of the planet Xandar. Despite a peace treaty, he is determined to wipe the planet and its inhabitants from existence. While Ronan does make an intimidating entrance, he sadly isn't a fascinating villain. He's simply out for blood and doesn't care who or what gets in his way. He's about as basic of a brute you can get. However, in fairness to Gunn's writing, it could be that he was made to be truly evil to make the Guardian's criminal background seem light in comparison. Anyway, Ronan seeks the help of 2 adopted daughters of Thanos under his command, Nebula, played by Karen Gillan, and Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana. Gamora convinces Ronan to send her by herself to retrieve the orb, undermining Nebula's capabilities. Speaking of the orb, Peter brings it to the broker on Xandar, but when he mentions Ronan's name, the broker backs out of the deal. Things don't get any better for Peter when Gamora shows up and takes the orb. As Peter chases after her, we come across a sleazy Stan Lee cameo and 2 anthropomorphic bounty hunters, bipedal raccoon Rocket, voiced by Bradley Cooper, and plant-like Groot, voiced by Vin Diesel. Both characters are completely CG, the first major Marvel characters to be designed as such. The effects on them are incredibly realistic, and you feel like they're really there. This is because Gunn had stand-ins for motion capture reference. His brother Sean, who also played Yondu's right-hand Kraglin, stood in for Rocket, and Christian Goldbleski stood in for Groot. This level of interaction provided for the cast helps cement the 2 as real people in the movie. Rocket and Groot discover the bounty on Peter and chase after him. This scene is just a great use of comedy and action. You have Gamora chasing after the orb, Peter chasing after Gamora, and Rocket and Groot trying to capture Peter, all of which lead to some fun moments. All 4 are apprehended by the Nova Corps, the police force of Xandar, including Roman Day, played by John C. Reilly. The Corps is led by Nova Prime, played by Glenn Close, who is struggling to maintain peace because of Ronan, who the Kree will do nothing about. The 4 are sentenced to jail time in the Kiln, a corrupt prison with a bad reputation. It's here we learn more about each character. Rocket was a genetic experiment that was abused and mistreated, and Groot's vocabulary is very limited, only able to say, "I am Groot," which Rocket can somehow understand. As for Gamora, her reputation as an adopted daughter of Thanos and lackey to Ronan doesn't sit well with the other prisoners, who constantly threaten her. One inmate in particular, Drax the Destroyer, played by Dave Bautista, has a personal vendetta against Ronan, who killed his wife and daughter. Drax was originally green in the comics, but Gunn made his skin gray to avoid similarities with the Hulk. Peter convinces Drax to let Gamora live so she can lead him to Ronan. Gamora reveals that she was planning on betraying Ronan and selling the orb so she can finally leave Thanos. She convinces everyone that if they work together to escape the prison and get the orb to her buyer, she'll split the profit and they can go their separate ways. They agree and work on a plan. Meanwhile, Ronan meets with Gamora and Nebula's adopted father Thanos and kills the other after learning of her betrayal. This is our first real look at Thanos, and the first time Josh Brolin played him, though he is uncredited in the film. The new design mixed with his armor and overall demeanor make him an intimidating force that even scares Ronan. Some have always joked about Thanos sitting on his throne and doing nothing, but I always felt it added an extra layer of fear. If Ronan is this afraid of him doing nothing, imagine how terrifying he is actually doing something. Back with our group of misfits, they hastily make their escape, with Drax joining them. They get to the Milano and make way to Gamora's buyer. Yondu, also curious about the buyer's identity, questions the broker and learns that it's the Collector. The team head course for a place called Nowhere, an underground criminal city built entirely out of the head of a dead Celestial that may or may not have a connection to the Eternals movie. Many references and Easter eggs in the movie allude to the Eternals from the comics, which were mainly put in for fun by James Gunn. Whether or not Marvel pays off these references remains to be seen. Anyway, while they wait for the Collector to summon them, Rocket, Groot, and Drax enjoy some drinks at the bar, and Peter and Gamora share a moment. With all the insane action and massive world building in the galaxy, it is nice to strip things back and let the characters be real people. Even if Gamora rejects Peter's advances and Drax gets into a fight with Rocket. As the others meet with the Collector, Drax sends a message to summon Ronan to them. The Collector reveals the contents of the orb, an Infinity Stone, specifically the Power Stone. We also get some lore explaining the importance that they'll have later on. In the Marvel Universe, the Big Bang formed into 6 Infinity Stones: power, space, time, mind, reality, and soul. Each control the flow of their own title. The Power Stone is particularly dangerous because it's almost impossible to wield. It takes someone with a strong will and being to be able to handle it. The Collector's servant Kurita, played by Ophelia Lovibond, tries to use it herself but is consumed by it. Realizing what they have, Gamora wants to try and turn it over to the Nova Corps instead. She fears that Ronan will use it to destroy the galaxy. Rocket could care less what happens to the galaxy and thinks they should just give it to Ronan. Peter, ever the idealist, thinks that they should just stick to the original plan and sell it to the Collector. However, they don't have much time to argue as Ronan, Nebula, and their forces arrive. Peter, Gamora, and Rocket use light pods to destroy the enemy's ship and make it back to the Milano while Ronan wipes the floor with Drax. Nebula destroys Gamora's ship outside nowhere, leaving her lifeless body behind as she collects the orb. She and Ronan leave the group in disarray. In a moment of sacrifice and admitted heroism, Peter gives himself up to Yondu and rescues Gamora with his helmet. The Ravagers recover the two, and Peter convinces Yondu to help them stop Ronan. Rocket and Groot finally admit their attachment to their new friends, and Drax acknowledges his lust for revenge won't bring his family back. Meanwhile, Ronan betrays Thanos, taking the stone for himself, with Nebula joining him. He decides to unleash his newfound power on his favorite planet, Xandar. The team reunites and plans with the Ravagers to protect Xandar and kill Ronan. They also contact the Nova Corps and request their help, which they reluctantly give. It's clear at this point the group's dynamic and how they relate to each other. Peter is the cocky but ultimately good-hearted hero. Gamora is the level-headed but emotionally vulnerable assassin. Drax is a fierce but dependable fighter. Rocket is a fun guy who is there when it counts, and Groot is the pure heart. Everybody's strengths and flaws are balanced with each other, which is what makes them the ultimate team. All parties arrive on Xandar with the Nova Corps holding up Ronan's ship. The Ravagers take on Ronan's fleet, and Peter's team goes inside the ship to take on him, Nebula, and Korath. This is the kind of climax I wanted from the Avengers. Don't get me wrong, the interactions between the characters were still fun, but it feels like Ronan had a much stronger force than the Chitauri. Gamora fights Nebula, who escapes the planet during the battle, and Peter, Drax, and Groot kill Korath and Ronan's men. They make it to Ronan, but are unable to kill him as the stone is protecting him. Rocket crashes the Milano into the ship, causing it to crash. Groot sacrifices himself by making his entire being a protective shield around everyone. This death is on par with Coulson's in Avengers, especially because his death is what ultimately brings the team together. As they emerge from the rubble, Ronan declares his reign of tyranny. Before he can unleash his power, however, Peter distracts him with a galactic dance-off, while Drax destroys the hammer holding the stone. Peter grabs the stone and surprisingly holds on to it for a good while before Gamora reaches out her hand. Peter also sees his mother, which for me feels like he's finally acknowledging his loss. He spent his whole life running, whether voluntary or not, but now he stays where he belongs. The team join hands and use the power of the stone to defeat Ronan, declaring themselves the Guardians of the Galaxy. Yondu demands the stone in exchange for his help, but Peter switches it with a fake. As the Ravagers leave, Kraglin remarks how it was probably for the best that they didn't deliver Peter to his father as they were hired to do, setting up the sequel. The Guardians give this stone to the Nova Corps, who also reveal that Peter is more than what he seems. When they arrested him, they found an anomaly in his system and had his DNA scanned. It appears Peter is only half human, with his father being some ancient creature, which explains why he was able to hold on to the stone. The Corps expunged their records and rebuilt the Milano as a thank you for their service. Rocket regrows Groot into a pot as he is reborn, and Drax declares that the true target of his vengeance is Thanos, as Ronan was only a pawn. Peter finally opens the last gift from his mother, which contains a cassette tape with more songs and a letter addressed to him. Doing this allows him to grieve. It felt like him holding on to the present and not opening it was a way to hide his pain. He could pretend she was still alive. We also finally learn where he got the name Star-Lord, as that was his mother's nickname for him. Kinda weird how T'Challa uses the same name in the What If series, but that's neither here nor there. The Guardians set off for their next adventure as the film ends. The post-credits scene doesn't have much significance other than introducing a new character, Howard the Duck, as voiced by Seth Green. Yes, the same Howard the Duck from that awful George Lucas movie. I bet a lot of people didn't know he was a Marvel character. Other than him and Cosmo the Canine Astronaut, this is just another ending played for laughs. When Guardians of the Galaxy first came out, I thought it was a fun time. Now I think it's one of Marvel's best. This is a perfect entry point for any MCU newcomer. I would, of course, recommend starting with Iron Man, but this film definitely has something for everyone. It's one of the few Marvel films my entire family loves, and with all the crazy cosmic stuff they're expanding on, it's nice to see that this movie kept things relatively simple. While fans were waiting for the Guardians' next journey, Marvel's other team would get their sequel first. Join me next time when we look at Avengers Age of Ultron and see if it fared better than its predecessor over time. Until then, if you want to keep up with my videos, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and check out my VODs on my other channel. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and share with friends. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.